So, welcome everyone. Thank you for choosing to be with us today for this crucial, honest, and real conversation and intergenerational national panel on trust, connection, and community. My name is Tally Dolge. I'm the CEO of Wellbeing Action for Youth and a national mental health speaker. I've spent my career talking to hundreds, if not thousands, of people about the silent challenges we face. I've seen firsthand how much courage it takes to admit I feel disconnected. The reality is, it's easy to feel a profound sense of distance in this world right now. I think we could all agree on that. We live in a time of unprecedented access. We have every tool at our fingertips, yet studies show that nearly half of all Americans feel alone. This is the isolation gap. It's not just about loneliness. It's about trust. It's about a strained relationship with a family member who just doesn't get your mental wellness struggles. It's the sense of being misunderstood by an entire generation. It's the unspoken, heavy topics from digital anxiety to life's biggest challenges that keep us searching for a new way to truly connect. This feeling of strain is real. It hurts our youth, it isolates our elders, and it frays the fabric of our communities. And we're all feeling it. But the good news, the purpose of this panel is not to dwell on the distance. Our purpose is to move past the silence and lean into solutions together. This is a real human-centered dialogue about the subjects that have kept many of us isolated. To help us build a bridge, we have assembled an extraordinary group of leaders who live and breathe this work. Dr. Ariana Howitt, Executive Clinical Director for the Kids Mental Health Foundation, who will ground our conversation in clinical realities facing our children and families. Tanja Miles, Senior Advisor for the Huntsman Family Foundation and CEO of Set Free Ministries, who brings profound insight into community healing and the role of faith and cultural connection. My dear friend Maureen Molak, founder and CEO of David's Legacy Foundation, who will share her journey to advocacy, fighting to create safer communities through trust and legislation. Rafael Campos, principal and founder of Campfire's Advisory Group and former deputy director of public engagement for the Office of the Surgeon General, who understands how to foster trust at the highest level of public service. Andy U. Reamer, National Strategic Innovator and Consultant with Side Porch Consulting, who brings expertise on how to design strategies and genuinely connect to people and organizations. And connecting us to the next generation's voice, we have a recorded session with Dylan Keith Humphrey, co-founder of 40 Do, a nonprofit organization, and he's an Emerson College junior and a Norman Lear scholar. We are here to explore how to listen better, to trust deeper, and to heal across generational lines. So let's start to build that bridge right now. I would love to have each one of our panelists just introduce themselves, introduce where they are coming from, what their organization is, and why is this important? Why is this conversation important to you right now? So I think we'll start with Andy.
Hi, everybody. My name's Andy. I use they, them pronouns. As Tali mentioned, I'm a partner over at Side Porch Consulting. I'm currently based in Los Angeles, and I'm particularly excited for this conversation and this ongoing work because the future requires us to have radical imagination that is shared about what a more beautiful and just future looks like. And that requires us to be in collaboration and open discussion and bringing a sense of curiosity to the table when we have intergenerational, intercultural conversations.
Wonderful. Ariana?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am here with the Kids Mental Health Foundation. So, we are all about helping adults promote mental wellness in children. So, we know that kids need to eat their veggies and exercise for their mental health. But what are those daily habits for their or for their physical health? What are the daily habits for their mental health? And so that is what we focus on. And I'm very excited about this conversation. We know that a lot of time kids feel like the parents just don't get them, that their caregivers don't understand them. And if a child doesn't feel accepted, if a child doesn't feel that sense of belonging, it's going to impact their mental health. And so these conversations are so important, so that from day one we are supporting a child in their development.
Thank you. Thank you. Tanja?
Hey, my name is Tanja Miles. I'm Senior Advisor with the Huntsville Mental Health Foundation when it comes to community engagement, awareness, and partnerships. And I also am the CEO of Set Free Indeed Ministry, a nonprofit based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I'm also a three-time suicide attempt survivor, where a lot of my trauma started when I was, a youth. So I'm so excited that we're having this conversation like never before, especially in this climate of, like you said, digital age, where we have to address connectedness. And I love that you guys started off talking about trust, because it has to be that factor when it comes to having these conversations and these connections with our youth.
Thank you. Maureen?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today and having this conversation. I am Maureen Molak from San Antonio, Texas, and the co-founder of David's Legacy Foundation. 10 years ago, I lost my 16-year-old son, David, to suicide after a year-long battle with social media and online gaming addiction. With the last 3 months of his life, he was the target of relentless cyberbullying by a group of classmates at his school. Since his death, I've been advocating for strong online protections for children in the state of Texas, as well as at the federal level, because I know that this is something that if we can't start to regulate social media and the harms that are affecting our young people and the mental health addiction, what's the next thing, which is AI, and we haven't even begun to even start with social media. So it's a conversation that we have to work together collaboratively. It's an intergenerational issue with us learning from each other, because we're never going to get to a point to where we can protect kids if we're not having these conversations and building trust amongst the generations. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you. And Raphael?
Thank you so much. Rafael Campos. I am the principal and founder for Campfire Advisory Group, which is um, a boutique consulting agency that I started since leaving the government earlier this year. When I was in government, I was most recently the Deputy Director for Public Engagement in the Office of the Surgeon General, where I started under the Obama administration, but actually stayed throughout President Trump's first term and continued throughout President Biden's most recent term, working on a various array of behavioral health topics. But what I like to share is public engagement is the government's clunky way of essentially saying anything public facing. So it was really whether you were in government, outside of government, and you wanted to engage with our office on these specific topics, I was the front door, or I was the gatekeeper of a lot of these relationships. And what I've taken with me since leaving government was really trying to focus on the how. I think a lot of really good folks are doing the work and doing the research and studies to determine what the what is to improve mental health for a variety of populations. And I really spent the bulk of my time since leaving government trying to work with folks on the how, so that they can apply all of the learnings that we're receiving in culturally competent ways, so that they're best applicable in the communities that they serve.
I love that. Thank you. Wow, what a group we have here. We are going to switch right now to a quick interview that I had the wonderful privilege to have last week with Dylan K. Humphrey. It's an intergenerational conversation, really about connection, disconnection, It was so real and authentic on, I think, both our parts, as people coming in from different generations, trying to really understand what's going on.
My name is Dylan Keith Humphrey. I recently turned 21 on the 28th of October. I'm a junior at Emerson College as a Norman Lear Scholar, studying film and psychology as my minor. Um, I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit with my sister, Denver, where we believe collaboration is a superpower that I think a lot of people don't really see like the power in. And I think when you have like collective urgency and you constantly are building bridges, you're creating a network, a really big garden of action and joy and power and youth urgency and agency. I am a storyteller as a filmmaker, but I also love moments like this where I can connect and share what I love to do. And like that physical aspect of our connectivity, the locking eyes, the affirming nods, the things that AI can't yet replicate. And so any chance I can get to celebrate that and also encourage young people to do more of that, I am having a good time.
I love that. And so, can you give me a little understanding about your organization and what it is that you do?
So 40 Do is in its 6th year, crazy enough. I think the birthday was like a few weeks ago. And we've been around for a little while. And our big goal is how can we use our platform as an accelerator for other issues? The nonprofit space can be competitive, but it doesn't have to be. And so how can two young people who care about all these different things create a platform that is just like, you can focus on this or that or do both. Like you don't have to choose. And so the belief in no niches and really the importance of like uplifting all these wonderful orgs and resources and also developing campaigns so that young people know like what we're thinking about also.
You and I are from very different generations, but at the same time, we were able to connect on a level. I think it was from maybe our, at least on my part, I think it was about our transparency and vulnerability, I think, in just having a real conversation. What do you see the disconnect being in conversations right now? And do you have any thoughts about what we could do to repair that?
Yeah, I think for intergenerational conversations, right? How for a young person, for me, right? And I would speak in more general terms. Sometimes you feel like you need to bring something to an adult for it to mean something, for them to actually take you seriously. And then maybe on the adult side, it's like I don't want to invade or be annoying or right. It's just but we both have our internalized preconceptions of what it means to interact with one another, right? And so for adults, understanding that we're in a period of social instability from the ages of like 5 to 25, you're constantly transitioning. You don't know what the next day consists of. And so for those who might be 40 plus, who had that stable life, right? Who had that house, that home, the kids, they have something they can that's familiar, something that they can understand that's very stable to them. And so understanding that as a young person, I have to find stable ground to relate to you.
So
Conversation.
good.
I have to find I have to basically find peace so that I can enjoy peace with you, right? And it's hard to verbalize that. And so it feels very start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And as you move and then stop, move and then stop, you're unsure if even the choices you're making are the correct ones. And
Yeah.
so I think we've spoken about this earlier. How can we make spaces that allow for mess and chaos and fear and the gross things no one wants to talk about, the big emotions, the little emotions. And I had a great conversation with a friend yesterday about saying the hard things. And they were like, honestly, and this is something that they haven't admitted before, I want to be held. Well, not physically, but like emotionally held. And we came to a conclusion like, I think we all want that in some capacity. We just have to admit it first. And so saying the hard things, being vulnerable to then, ask for someone to be vulnerable right back to you.
What do you think the barrier is, if there is a barrier between somebody in your generation asking somebody else older for help?
Honestly, it's the vocabulary, and it's the do you feel prepared to say what you want to say? And I think it's because young people, like some of us can't form the questions, and on the other side, but some adults just don't have the answers. And so if we just let the space be what it needs to be, and like I bring you this, you
Mm,
hold it, not don't try to form it into whatever it needs to be for that moment, just hold it for me. And just me knowing that you have it and that you know and that you like you've witnessed it, um and you're there and you're very aware of it will give me more comfort in whatever I'm going through. It's like
mm,
someone knows, someone cares. And like let's for instance,
yeah.
um if you were to, like, for instance, let's just say you were being bullied, right? And
Mhm.
you shared that with your parent, and your parent as an adult you want to be able to solve. That's just like you want to be able to just
100%.
solve and give tips to an immediate solution, right? Um, and I think in the young person's mind, for me, I would be afraid that that bullying, that me sharing that, would be a constant conversation that's brought up, and then
So you
can
wanted
we?
to bring it up and get and make a point, but you don't want somebody to dwell on it from another
Yeah,
generation.
like
Yeah.
I want to know that I'm bullied, that I'm being bullied, and that I'm struggling, but I'm still working through it. And I'll come to you if I need more. But after that conversation, can we get milkshakes? Like,
Yeah. I
yeah,
love that.
can we be together and can we just know together and not try to solve things immediately?
What kind of advice would you give to people who don't feel connected, who feel sort of on their own?
I'm growing up. I grew up homeschooled, right?
Yeah.
And so we share that, and
Uh-huh.
I a big part of that experience was having my sister there, right? We did everything together, right? So I wasn't alone. I had someone there, but just because we were in proximity just does not mean we would be connected, right? We had to make an active effort to connect, to share, to be present together so that we could approach things together. And so when you don't have connection or you're feeling like you're alone, I think the fact that someone else knows means that you're seeking connection. Like you're asking for help. I think that's really the hardest part. And then I think more importantly, when you know someone is alone, I think it's important for us to start building bridges. You know, like I know someone else who's also alone. I know someone else who might be in a similar place as you, or just opening your door for that person to keep sharing. Because at some point, after they keep coming back to you, they're gonna get sick of you. You know, they're gonna get sick of you, and then, but because you've been working on it together, they're gonna have the confidence to be like, you know what, I have this question, but I'm gonna ask somebody else this time. I feel confident enough, I feel strong enough after all this building we've been doing together to finally make that friend or ask that coworker.
This is so good. Um, and I would love to know, are you doing anything right now in your work or even in school or some of the documentary? Are you doing anything right now that is based on creating connection?
Yeah, so I'm currently doing a campaign in Boston called the Wonder Campaign. And it's with support from the National Institute for Play is a great partner. Purpose Commons is another organization that's helped support. Converse is another one that's been a great supporter in just navigating Boston and understanding the city. And as well as several different advisors from Aspen Institute, Harvard, pediatricians who have kind of all like emphasized the need for play, but just as like an inherent part of how we approach things, right? And how that connects to purpose and also like our confidence and urgency and agency. And so we're doing an experiment. We're bringing out like emerging adults to a playground in Boston. Like let's
Mm,
just what does it feel like to here's a physical space for you. I'm not giving you anything else. Play, roam, frolic. If you play tag, you do. If you don't, you don't. How does it feel to be 25 and do monkey bars? Like
mm,
what does that feeling enable you to feel? And why are we only condensing that feeling to that physical experience?
mm,
I think in play, you find what you really want to do. And so, like in school, in the workplace, other spaces need play to be a central element because that's how you find out like what you want, what you like, what you don't like. The more we play, the more gentle we are with ourselves, the more kind we are to new experiences, to new feelings, and for one another. I think that's how real community is built.
I am so impressed and I love what you're doing. I admire you on every level. Thank you for everything. It was such a pleasure. I wish I could give you a big hug, but thank you. Can each of you, and we can start with, let's just say, I'm going to have Tanja start with this. Can each of you share a moment or a feeling that perfectly captures what intergenerational disconnection feels like to you personally?
You know, I was having a conversation with some youth, and I guess, you know, for me, one of the things that one of the students said is that, you know, well, every time I talk to someone who's older than I am and I tell them what I'm going through, and the first thing they always say, well, you shouldn't be going through anything. You don't work, you don't have, all you have to do is make good grades, and that's it. So I don't understand why you're feeling like this. And I'm just like, wow, that's tough. And I think a lot of times, you know, people say that because they think, oh, well, you don't have anything to deal with. I'm an adult. I have a job. I'm adulting. I'm, you know, doing life on life terms, and I have all these responsibilities, and you don't have anything. Well, the thing that we do have in common is a brain, and that we're both all trying to do life. And then, you know, it's so funny because we forget when we were, you know, 13, 10 or 11 or 16, the challenges we had. And so now with social media and so many other distractions, you know, it's just a lot. And again, you know, active listening is key. And I think that when we're talking to different, you know, generations, we have to listen with the open mind and to go, you know what, they're human beings, you know, just like we are. And they have challenges they face. It might be on a different level, but their feelings matter.
Absolutely. Ariana, I know you're doing a lot of work in this space, so I would love to hear.
Yeah, I love this question, and I was thinking about it from, an intersectional identity of as an immigrant and working with the immigrant communities. Not only are there those generational gaps, but there's also the acculturation gap. So you have kids that are adapting and adjusting to their new culture a lot quicker than the parents. And so a lot of the times when you ask for how does it feel, share a moment or a feeling, a lot of the times it feels like simply not speaking the same language, sometimes quite literally not speaking the same language. But how do you form a healthy relationship? How do you feel supported? How do you feel that you have that team member when there's that gap, when you're not even speaking the same language, whether literally or figuratively? And so I think for me that's kind of the feeling, is just being on complete different pages.
I love, thank you. Maureen.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean on personal experience. And when my son David was really struggling with his social media use, and he started to show all the signs of a behavioral addiction, from lying about completing his homework. He was sneaking around using his devices when he wasn't supposed to. He would get angry and aggressive when we would try to get him to stop playing these games and using social media. And then there towards the end, when we realized that things were getting really bad, he started stealing from us in order to purchase virtual assets in some of these gaming platforms. And, the disconnection between the fact that I did not grow up with technology, I didn't start using technology until I was out in the workforce in my late 20s, compared to David, who grew up with only knowing technology and that rapid evolvement. I mean, he grew up in that age of what Jonathan Haidt calls the anxious generation, right? So the invention of the iPhone and the rapid evolving of technology. And so just knowing that there was a lot of conflict in our home, so that intergenerational of not understanding each other, I think was in hindsight, I wish I knew then what I know now.
Thank you. Raphael?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to reflect back on just this past weekend. I was visiting family in New Jersey. I had dinner with my parents, dinner with my in-laws, and each of those dinners had, I would say, about like 4 different generations in them. And what intergenerational disconnection felt for me and feels for me in this time is just not even knowing where to start. I think trying to come up with a topic or with buzzwords or references that resonated with each of these groups. I think there was just such a lack of inertia to just kind of get the ball rolling in a way. And I think it's uncomfortable. And I think folks avoid that. They don't really know where to start. They don't really know where it's going to go. And I think because of that uncertainty and that discomfort, it leads to making something as small as like just starting a conversation feel much more deeper than it needs to be. But I just this past weekend I kind of felt that. And I know leaving, when I was talking with my wife, we were like, why was that? Like what could we have done differently, essentially? But it did feel like starting the conversation felt like such a, a big step. Whereas typically, when you're with close friends, it doesn't feel like that. So why was that?
So right on with all the conversations I've been having. Andy.
What beautiful sharing so far. For me, I'm going to borrow from a friend, Dr. David Shu, who wrote a piece called Untethered. And I think that that is what I feel in this disconnection, a lack of tetheredness, a lack of connection, this feeling of floating that many folks talked about, where it's hard to find that traction on the ground to start building that connection. And you feel like you are grasping at air, trying to move through space where you can't push off of anything. And I think that feeling of lack of agency, lack of self-efficacy, to have these conversations is tangible for so many when we try to have these conversations that often start from this place of disconnection.
Thank you. Wow. This is, already so brilliant, and everybody has, what I love about this group is that we all have different experiences within the context of this and show the real human side to this, because I think that's one of the things we have lost in connection is the human piece of this and how much we are craving that. So let's go with Maureen. It's often said that we're more connected than ever because of technology. So I know you're working a lot with technology now, but also more alone. So we may be more connected, but we're more alone. How has this paradox shown up in your life and in the lives of those of who you know or you work with?
Yeah, well, I work with a lot of young people, really young adults who had, grew up with technology, as well as those that are using it right now in their early teens. One of the things that I recognize, and there's lots of tentacles to this question. I mean, this could take up a whole hour, but I'm going to focus on one thing, and that is how we use social media versus the passive use of social media versus the active use of social media. And those that are using social media to reach goals, who are using it to post and comment in an active way and getting involved in that, have better experiences with their mental health and how social media affects their life, versus those who are more passive users, those that are using, who are doom scrolling, who are spending a lot of time on these short form videos. And when the algorithm starts picking up on anything that they're maybe pausing on and sending them into these echo chambers where they are getting content that is either inappropriate or not safe for them. So we're talking about eating disorders. We're talking about unhealthy beauty filters. Now, the most recent thing that we're seeing is that kids are coming to their parents wanting to especially girls, wanting to purchase these very expensive beauty treatments and they're young teens when they should be outside playing and playing in the dirt and not worrying about their most beautiful skin. And so I think it's really important that we're looking at the passive user as the one who is really having those negative experiences and that are the loneliest of those that are using social media in that capacity.
Thank you. And I think you're bringing up a really good point to how how social media also impacts mental wellness. And I'm going to ask Ariana this question. Mental wellness is a topic that we all approach differently. What's one thing you believe your generation, again, we're all from various generations here, misunderstands about another's approach to well-being?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because the way we talk about mental health keeps changing with every generation. We have younger generations being more open, feeling less stigma. I have patients bring their friends to therapy all the time. They're just so like it's like, oh, I'm hanging out with my friend, but I have a therapy appointment. And we often hear kids saying that they don't feel supported by the adults in their lives, that the adults don't get them, don't understand, they don't have the same mental health language. Um, and I think one thought that jumped out with this question is we did a research study where we talked specifically to parents in the workplace, so caregivers that have children. And when we asked them about mental health, we did find a generational difference in that younger generations are putting their children's mental health, their own mental health, as a priority over their work, over their career. And that's not the same with the older generations. And one thing that I think about a lot with that data, because you see the conversation on social media or even in our own workspaces, is that there is this misunderstanding of older generations label the younger generations as lazy, right? They're not as hard workers. Whereas the younger generation sees themselves as, I'm setting a boundary. I'm taking care of my mental health. I'm not defining myself by my work. I'm defining myself by my connections, my wellness, my hobbies, the things I like. Um, and so I do think that there's this generational gap when it comes to mental health, especially in how we are defining success, how we're defining ourselves, because the younger generation really wants to focus on me and that's success, whereas the older generation is kind of had to approach a different life and their careers came first. And so I find that conversation super interesting.
100%. And I think that's so relevant and goes right into the next question that I have for Tanja is, how did your generation traditionally talk about or deal with mental health challenges? And what were some of the unwritten rules, not the written, the unwritten rules?
They were all unwritten. I mean, talk about it at all. And being an African American, person who was raised, in a faith-based home, you just didn't talk about it. Number one, you know, from the faith perspective, if you did, you just had to pray about it and put it under the rug of blood, and that's it. And so then when that didn't work, then it made you feel even worse about who you was. I'm talking about from my personal perspective. And then being African American, that's just something you didn't talk about because of tradition, trauma, and trust. We didn't have access to anything, so we had to create our own ecosystem when it came to, anything addressing mental health. You just didn't talk about it. I mean, that was some other people's problem. We don't have those kind of problems. And so it was just, again, it was so unwritten that it was just something that you just kind of suck it up and put it where. And so, which calls for a lot of untreated trauma. And then, of course, resources. You didn't, why talk about something when you know that there's no help for it, And so, but yeah, coming from those perspective, it was just such a challenge, and so you had to bottle up all of these things on the inside because it was taboo to talk about, mental health. I mean, we didn't even have that phrase back then, mental health. That wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a phrase. It wasn't, anything that was remotely, you know, close to addressing. So it was something that we did not do. which calls for a lot of, anxiety, depression, substance use disorder, and, suicide attempts.
Absolutely. And I also think there's the definition piece, how we're all defining mental health now, and we're all defining it so differently. I think there's so much vocabulary out there now, especially with technology, that we're seeing such a difference in our language. And does that even make more of a disconnect? That's just a question that I'm getting at.
Yeah, and then back then it was just called straight up crazy, because I had an uncle who
Right.
was schizophrenia, and it's something that my grandmother and everybody tried to protect us from. And I would just remember people just calling him crazy. And so when I started having my own challenges, I was so scared that I was going to be crazy like my Uncle Larry. And so that's a scary thing for any child to, bear that burden on. I'm just going to be crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So the big thing that I think also that comes back to connection is trust. And the idea of trust is central in this conversation. So, Raphael, from your perspective, what is the biggest barrier to building trust with a different generation?
Man, this is such a good question. I mean, I think if we look back to like what we already know, I think evolutionarily we trust our in groups. And what I think we've seen absolutely is that how we define and perceive us versus them varies at the individual level, especially at the generational level. So, how how I determine whether I can rely on someone, how I'm determining whether their actions or words will result in positive actions for me. Like these are probably subconscious questions that I'm asking myself as I'm interacting with someone, as I'm trying to figure out whether I can trust them or not. So I think it boils down to something, Ariana, you had said in the first question, where it absolutely is language. I think the absolute barrier are the words themselves. And again, just like looking inward at an example, I grew up in a Latino household in northern New Jersey, and language in my household was commands. Grab me this, get me that, do this, do that. You don't do this, this is going to happen. And I'm not one who feels that I experienced immense trauma, but that language was absolutely used as control, as a power dynamic, and it's absolutely affected how I trust people depending on how I react to that jarring and charging language. And it's affected how I'm raising my daughter in the language that I'm using. But subconsciously, I'm just widening that gap of how she's going to determine what trust looks like for my with her grandparents, with my parents as well. So I think it absolutely is language. It's absolutely the words. And one of the tricks or tips that I would recommend for folks are, get outside of your comfort zone and try meeting someone where they are with your language. Doesn't mean that you need to be involved in like every inside joke, but if someone younger is like using language that doesn't resonate with you, ask a couple questions or say, we used to say this word as that when I was young. Like just try meeting them where they are, because I do think that if you can't communicate with someone and resonate using the words that that are comfortable to you, I think it's going to be really difficult for you to establish trust with that person where they're just not going to see you as part of their in group. So I think it really does, boil down to something that, evolutionarily, like we've used as a way to feel safe.
I love what you just said about kind of meeting them where they're at, but also saying, you know what, I don't understand. I do a lot of this actually when I speak to younger generations. I'm like, I don't get that, or I don't get that word, or could you just help me understand? Like there's so many amazing words, so many different vocabularies that are out there now, and it can be daunting, but it can also be really exciting because I actually find it like a puzzle. How do you connect with what I know from my generation and how I was brought up versus how these younger people are speaking? And we all had words too. We had all those words. And I mean, I still remember my words. I still use them. And they also look at me like I'm probably from another planet every now and then. So, Andy, can you share a moment when you felt a significant gap in communication or understanding with someone from another generation? And what was it about?
There are so many moments that come to mind. I think all of us have something that pop up when they hear that question. I think about my time playing professional soccer in Germany and coaching 11-year-olds over there, where not only I had to talk with them about the challenges of physical violence that was happening, but also talk about it in a different language than I was brought up in. To doing work more recently under the past administration with climate change and the energy transition work, going out to rural parts of America, to other urban parts around the country, and really trying to talk about what the future of the energy transition looks like, but being given words that stemmed from best of intentions, from equity and inclusion. And my grad school, I was at Harvard, and I was part of the first fellowship of Equity and Inclusion Fellows. So I was trained as a facilitator in this space. And there's immense history behind words that then become part of the pop cultural language and then get diluted and get identified by particular groups in particular ways. And the best skill that I am still working on, that I started learning in grad school, that I try to use in my work now around the world, is active listening, and specifically trying to quiet that inner voice inside of my head that's trying to answer the question before they're done talking, and figuring out how to then get that right to then answer. It's quieting that voice and really trying to come to that space with a level of trust in myself and them and the other person and the other people to bridge any gaps, assumptions, biases that we're all coming with, so that we can truly listen to each other, even if we are using different words, different languages, and have different ideas. But I think that's really what is a through line with these moments that I've been thinking about, which is I've realized that when I'm able to come to a space with a level of humble confidence in myself and an openness to truly listening, that's when we can build understanding and communication.
I love that. And active listening, as you know, is a big part of well-being action for youth and one of our 3 pillars. And I think about that so often now. I mean, I catch myself like, am I just going to respond? Like, am I doing this just to respond? And when I am able to sit back and listen and really hear, I will tell you, it's a whole different experience. I think communication feels different. It feels natural. It feels healthy. Unlike where I was always like, oh, I need to respond. I need to respond to somebody. So I think that's a really big thing. And we also need to learn some tools. So, Ariana, this question is for you. When we think about prevention, it's about being proactive. What is a single proactive step, a conversation, an action, a simple question that you believe could help prevent mental health struggles, possibly in the next generation, or even just have them communicate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple and quick answer, which is we all have mental health. I love what Tanja said of we all have brains, right? I mean, yes. What I see right now is as a society, we are waiting to talk about or even think about mental health until there's a concern or a crisis. Before that, we're not thinking about it. And we have to change that. We have to think about mental health from the moment a child is born, just like we think about their physical health. We have to think about it as a wellness strategy. And so that's my step is we have to do daily habits, daily activities for our mental health in the same way we do our physical health. And Again, Tanja, something you said jumped out at me, which was we didn't talk about mental health because if we identified a problem, there was no resource, right? There was no way to get help. And I'm sitting here like stuck thinking about that because that is important. A lot of times we don't talk about it because we're afraid to know. And I think that's why another reason why promotion and prevention is really important is there are ways to decrease risk. There are ways to keep ourselves healthy. And so I would say that the counter of that feeling is we want to try and take care of our mental health because there are not enough resources out there to support our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So this question is for Tanja and Andy. What does a healthy, thriving intergenerational community look like in practice? And what role do you see your generation from different generations playing in building it? I think this is really important and hearing from different generations.
Well, can I go first? So first of all, Andy, let me just apologize to y'all right now because we ain't right. I was looking at TV last night and, we talking about active listening. Since we're going to keep it real, let's keep it real, real. And the people who was talking wasn't even doing active listening because the other one was, trying to get their point across and really not hearing. And so I am sorry to you guys who are younger than I am. I have more birthdays that, we're trying to figure it out in our own generation because we see that happening so much. Active listening is so vital. And we're just not doing a good job. So, we want to listen to you guys so you can tell us, or, we can sit down and talk about it and maybe, really address the great divide of communication and respecting someone's voice and and just really hearing them, and like, Raphael said, and meeting people where they are. And I think that when we do that, we will get a better understanding of that person and their feelings and what they're going through respectively. And so, right now, the way everything, is looking right now, I'm just like, I'm sorry, we ain't getting it right among ourselves. So I'm gonna try to get it right with y'all. So I'm just gonna say I'm sorry. And I'm gonna let you, let you say what you have to say, because that's all I have to say. I'm sorry. We're not a good example right now. We're gonna get it better.
I hear you, and I so appreciate the generous reflection of where you're coming from. And I think that I want to kind of reject the apology because there's larger systems at play. There's systems and histories and traumas at play that didn't allow us the collective privilege to have the words, space, opportunity to have those conversations. And I think from my perspective, I've had to learn the phrase. I've had to really bring into the phrase more often the I don't know, and coming with that mindset. I see so many amazing intergenerational communities. Tanja, I know that you're building an amazing community, have built an amazing community. There's one in Texas called the Mustard Seed Generation that I've advised for a little bit that is connecting Korean American immigrants with the church to have mental health conversations. There is an interesting, a hot take that I have, if I can be brave enough to share it right now, is in the climate space. We often talk about we're doing this for the next generation. I'm doing it for my kids. It's when my kids came along that I started really caring about climate change. And it's like we shouldn't need that to be the charge behind why we care about the planet and about each other. It is about caring. In caring for other folks, we're caring for ourselves, and in caring for ourselves, we're caring for other folks. And as a millennial that's kind of smack dab in the middle of the millennial generation, depending on how you calculate the generations, we're heading into a space where we're heading into a sandwich generation. We accelerated a little bit in COVID times because we had to care up and down at the same time. And as we move through the years, we're going to have to be more and more in that sandwich generation of carrying up and down at the same time. And I think that there is this consistent push for us to look outwardly, to constantly be like, okay, I need to go look and search and do all these things, which I'm love doing. It's part of being curious. It's part of building community, but also taking that breath and showing yourself the grace, the patience of like, I've made mistakes. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the community, and that's okay. I'm going to move forward in this way. And I think there's a level of that self-awareness that I believe Ariana hit on, and so many other panelists hit on so well, of like, we all have mental health. It's this broad thing. And the prevention space and proactive space has really been dominated by, more wealthy white folks that are like, you have to pay for that. This is free stuff. This is, how do we take time to be kind to ourselves and be kind to others?
And I think, Andy, too, we used to always say, I don't know if your generation say, put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Right.
And I think that that's really, if we take the time, to do that, and there are ways that we can do that. Going back to when I was in a high school class one day, and I just asked them a simple question: what music do you like? And so when they told me at the time, it's like, oh, we love Rod Wave. And I'm like, so why do you love Rod Wave? And it's like, oh, he just gets us. He gets it. He speaks our language. And so I took the time to go and research Rod Wave music. And when I listened to it, I'm just like, oh my God. Because he was talking about PTSD, thinking about suicide and things like that. And so it helped me really get, in a perspective of putting myself in their shoes. And I'm like, okay, the next time I went back to do the healing circle, it was kind of easier for me to identify, because they gave me that information. I took that information intentional, and now I was able to go back to talk to them because I got it a little more.
I would love to add one more thing to that.
Please.
What that also highlights for me is the definition of compassion. Compassion, the etymology of that means to struggle with. We can only do so much to imagine. We can do all the research. There's actually this amazing group out of London called Hip Hop Psych that's all around how hip hop and neuroscience builds community. It's amazing. But there's compassion means to struggle with, and it takes that action of really being alongside of a person that takes a level of courage that you just shared, of like, I'm going to go and take that onto myself. I'm going to research this and come back to this space and share this space with you, with my new learnings of, oh, this was really interesting. Tell me more. That is truly amazing. So thank you so much for sharing that, Tanja.
I just want to say, just hearing this from the two of you, I'm sitting here in awe, because I think that what we're lacking in today's culture are conversations like this. And when Tanja first said, I'm sorry for our generation, sorry, I totally get that. And I love that you said, no, there's so much more to it. But like, a conversation like this needs to continue, needs to evolve, needs to be on everyone's, mind at this point, because what it just did was you both actively, I was going to say actively listen to each other, and we're definitely very curious of what each other had to say. So I'm just going to tell you 100%, that was just incredible. So now I'm going to go on to Maureen and Raphael. Can you share a story about a time you've seen different generations come together to solve a problem in a way that surprised you? What was the secret to the success of this? Let's talk about positivity. Maureen, go ahead.
I love this question because it's what gives me hope. And since I've been working on federal protections to keep kids safe online. I have worked with many generations of people. So you've got the boomers and Gen X, those parents who didn't grow up with social media and being super connected to technology, to the millennials like Andy, who were kind of sandwiched in there in the middle, that depending on where they land in that spectrum may have had a little bit more technology in their formative years, to the Gen Z, right, who grew up as the digital natives, all coming together to address a problem with a common goal, and being able to sit down and listen together, actively listening to one another without judgment. And what I love most about these conversations is that the digital natives, or those who grew up with technology, aren't blaming us for the problems that they have experienced growing up with having so much technology in their life, because they understand that we were operating off of the information that we had at the time. And so being able to be sympathetic and honest with one another in a judgment-free space, and having a common goal, that's how we're going to be able to work together. And it's been a great success story.
That's so great. Raphael?
Yeah, I have two quick ones. One that I'll share
love it.
that's like much more practical, and then I have a personal story. When I was in government, there was a lot of momentum towards youth action committees, young people being placed on boards, and as much as I love the momentum that we've seen there, so many of them are performative, and like young people could absolutely like sniff out the ones that are. So I would say it's a good approach, but if you're going to do it, the young person needs to see how like their voice is attributing to decision making. They need to see real value in how their perspectives are being utilized in problem solving. I think it's a good opportunity, and I think there are a lot of local governments like mayors who have done it, and the young people are involved. They cycle out every year, so it's like a different high school student every year, but like they could see themselves in like how things are getting done, and that has like huge benefits at the local level. It has huge benefits for young people who want to like engage civically. So I would say it can be great. It is not a panacea. I think there are a lot of bad ones. So I think trying to pick out the good ones is like that could be really positive. So that's my practical example. My personal example is about my niece. She's in high school, so I think on paper she's probably at the upper end of Gen Alpha, but she definitely like associates more with Gen Z. I feel like I'm giving a astrology, like when someone's like, "Oh, I'm a Cancer, but my moon is in whatever." But yeah, so she's Gen Alpha, but she definitely feels like she's more Gen Z. Um, she's one of those younger Latinos who, she speaks less Spanish than her mom does, my older sister, who speaks less Spanish than my parents do. So there's that, that's going on. This girl loves K-pop, teaches herself Korean in her downtime, doesn't know a lick of Spanish, and has no interest in learning Spanish, which is quite the predicament for my sister, who she can't really communicate with her grandfather. You know what I mean? So how does she approach this? Well, she wants to go to K-pop shows. She needs a chaperone, and my sister leverages her inventory of uncles, aunts, cousins, family friends to go with her, and it's always someone different. And she sees this older generation completely out of their comfort zone, but buying into it, drinking the Kool-Aid, being a part of it. So you know what happens when we're at a family party? She doesn't speak a lick of Spanish, but she's got all the confidence, and she's not worried about stepping outside of her comfort zone because she's seen them do that for her. So they have that cultural buy-in, and that they're not really a fan of this, but they're doing this for me. I can put forth a little of the effort. It does take like talking to like my parents and saying, well, don't criticize her Spanish, like encourage her so that she doesn't feel like embarrassed by it. But so much of it is just my sister saying, all right, well, you want to go to these shows. I don't want to go to 8 of them. How can I tap in like my network so that she's being exposed also to like different folks of different generations all around this topic and genre of music that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I'll go there. She'll buy me a shirt my size of a band that I don't know about, and I'm there and I'm dancing with her, and it's great. But when I'm speaking Spanish to my dad and she's in the room with me, she's much more willing to like be a part of that conversation because we've built that environment and that relationship with one another where she's not nervous about it, she's not afraid about it, she's not worried about being embarrassed. So that's a very like small out there example, but I do think it's one where it's like my sister had to get creative because her just yelling at her to learn Spanish wasn't working. And is she fluent? Absolutely not, but like she has all the gusto and like the confidence behind her, and I think it's a step in the right direction.
And I think what you just said there very much said to me respect.
Totally.
Respect from generations. What we are lacking in a lot of conversations today is respect. And how do we build trust without respect? So I just heard such a beautiful thing saying, okay. And then you being able to bridge the gap between generations and saying, look, she doesn't speak Spanish the way you would want her to. Let's understand. So I think that is so, so important in all of these conversations is the respect piece and respecting other people's life experiences. That's part of this and why people end up isolating, we know, or finding things that they probably are not supposed to be doing a lot of the time because they don't feel respected, because they don't feel that they can trust people. So I have two final questions for everybody, which I'm so excited about. If you could give one message to this audience, one thing to remember from this conversation, what would it be? And I would like to start with Maureen.
I just would say, we don't have all the answers, but what we can do is we can come together in events like this and talk about and learn from one another and just appreciate the experiences that everybody's bringing to the table.
I love that. Ariana.
I would say you're not too busy. We're living in a world where we're all too busy. Slow down and be purposeful. Prioritize connection, prioritize conversations. You have time for it and make time for it if you feel like you do not.
Love that. Raphael.
I would say it doesn't need to be that deep. I think taking away like the stress of it needing to be perfect, I think just like approaching it is it's just a conversation. Let me just try it. I may get turned down. That's fine. But taking away the edge so that it doesn't feel so difficult and like immense, I think that's just like one small quick advice that could go a long way.
I love that. Tanja.
I guess, go back to what we talked about earlier is this really active listening. It's just really sitting and, just sitting with somebody. A lot of times we're not going to have all the answers. And just sometimes just listening and sitting is okay. It really is, because us sometimes listening without saying nothing is more powerful than us saying something with no meaning and no compassion.
Absolutely. Andy.
Beautiful. I would say let's be imaginative about what the future might hold. It's really important to point out the injustices of today. It's really important to point out that there is this disconnection. It takes a little bit more of that time to really imagine what justice, what connection might actually be like. And the hardest piece, I think, is taking that imagination and then being able to communicate it and hear other people's imagination of what this future can be like.
Blown away. In one word, each one of you, or a short phrase. So I know some of us I can't do one word, as we know. What is the most important ingredient for lasting connection across generations? What do you think specifically? Let's see. Let's start with Tanja. Okay, Tanja, then I won't start with you.
No,
I
that's
love
good.
that
No, I want
face.
somebody else. I guess, just respect and understanding.
Respect and understanding. Beautiful. Raphael,
I'll say curiosity. Just ask questions.
love that. Ariana,
Empathy over judgment.
wonderful. Ooh, yes. Maureen,
Be radically present.
ooh.
Yeah.
Andy,
I'm gonna go back to my favorite, which is compassion. I struggle with people to build towards this future.
wow. I mean, I don't have the words to say how grateful I am to have all of you do this today. This was such an incredible, transformative hour. Thank you, Maureen, Ariana, Tanja, Andy, Raphael, and of course, Dylan. But thank you for mainly your vulnerability and your wisdom and a much needed roadmap for connection. If there's one thing that I hope that everyone would remember for today, it is the distance we feel is not a permanent state. It's an invitation to listen better. We have the power right now to shift from judgment to curiosity and from isolation to intention. We know that a conversation like this generates even more questions than we can answer in this hour. So if you have a question for our esteemed panelists, perhaps something about prevention or technology or building trust in your own family or community, we want to hear it. We will be gathering your questions and working with our experts to get them answered. Please email your question. We're going to actually put this up on the screen very shortly to contact@wellbeingactionforyouth.org after the event. And we will compile the answers and get this to our entire audience. But the dialogue doesn't end here. The work in building connection requires daily practice, and we want to equip you with the best tools to start today. I am thrilled to announce the launch of Wellbeing Action for Youth's brand new digital resource hub called The Way Forward. This hub features resources and conversation starters inspired by today's panel, including tools developed by some of our very experts, Ariana, Andy, okay, just to name a few who are absolutely here and have contributed to our incredible hub platform. Whether you're a parent or an educator, a youth advocate, or simply somebody looking to deepen a relationship, you'll find practical tools to put today's lessons into action. You can access it immediately at wellbeingactionforyouth.org. And we're going to actually put this up so you don't have to just write it down very quickly. But thank you for showing up today with open hearts and a commitment to connection. Remember the faces and the voices of the people you heard today. Go out, open a dialogue, and build a little more trust in your corner of the world. From all of us, especially me here at Wellbeing for Youth, we ask you to stay connected, stay well, and keep building these beautiful bridges. And I thank you to this incredible, incredible panel.